Wednesday Addams was not scared of anything. She had seen a lot in her eternal existence, seen empires fall and rise, nations go to war over the words in old books, even rebelled against the supreme authority, the elder, the creator, the one above all, God. Her father, refusing to submit and love humans. She knew his anger would always give way to mercy and forgiveness. It was his way. Not even death, the horseman, had any sway over her. But her fingers tightened round the handle of her blade, hands turning chalk white just at how tight she was holding it. Because not a mere 5 meters in front of her was the angel with wings of molten fire. The accursed one, Croptor, the angel of light. The morning star. The serpent. Satan. Lucifer. She was terrified of him. Not because he could sweep her aside with a flick of his wrist or kill her in 1,000 different ways. No. It was because of all beings in the universe she couldn't predict him. Everyone, even her father, followed a set pattern of the way they fundamentally operate. Of course, Lucifer had two constants about him. He loved the animals of Earth, and he loved Earth itself. But not its people. Wednesday Addams, the fallen angel, chuckled. His leg bounced up and down over the side of the chair as he sat leisurely. She held the angel blade close to her chest. Lucifer chose rarely to walk the earth. The only times he did was to check on the earth and its animals. Lucifer's rebellion extended further than just his hatred for humans. He wanted control of the earth. Not to dominate it or subjugate it. He wanted to care for it. He believed he was better suited than humans to be its caretaker. It was one of the few traits about the devil that could openly admired. But for Wednesday, he really did strike fear into her, especially now she had something to protect. "Why are you here, Lucifer?" Wednesday asked calmly, raising her blade slightly higher. Lucifer made a pointed look at the blade as if to say, "Really?" He stood up and snapped his fingers and the chair vanished. He tooted before flicking his wrist, and Wednesday was powerless but to watch the angel blade fly from her grasp and into his. He laughed darkly. "Oh, Wednesday, you never learn," the archangel said. He brought the blade up his eyes and examined the blade from hilt to tip. Letting out impressed him as he ran his fingers down its edges. "Your last blade got destroyed in the fight against Ishmael, didn't it?" Wednesday could do nothing but mutely nod. Lucifer wrapped his fingers round the hilt and held it in front of him. "Excellent smith work, Wednesday," he complimented. "The hilt is particularly well made, kudos to you." He laughed. "There were rumors down in the pit, but this confirms it," he taunted. Her face paled and she closed her eyes in resignation. She knew he was feeling the engravings that she had put on the newly forged weapon. A wolf howling at a full moon, with a raven perched upon it. "So, Wednesday Serial," he almost spat her real name, his voice dangerously low. "Angel of protection, has fallen for one of them." He spat on their dorm floor in disgust. Wednesday saw no use in hiding the truth. "Yes, I have," she gulped. His eyes flashed red as he threw the blade back at her, which she caught in an iron grip. "Disgusting. She isn't fully human," Wednesday blurted out. Lucifer cocked an eyebrow. "Oh? And just exactly what is she then, a werewolf, a leakin'?" Lucifer's eyes lit up in joy, a complete contrast to how he was a mere 10 seconds before. He clapped his hands together. "Wonderful! When can I meet her?" Wednesday was borderline about to have a heart attack. Lucifer was unstable at the best of times. "Never," Wednesday said, raising herself to her fullest height. Lucifer merely raised an eyebrow but said nothing. His eyes took in the colorful decor. His face brightened as he walked over to examine the ungodly amount of toy bears that littered her side of the room. Even Lucifer seemed reluctant to make a step further after noting the absurd amount of toys there were. Wednesday watched on in amusement. "Oh, my dad!" he muttered. "She has a lot of these." He paused, his face frowning. "What in Dad's name are these? Effigies? Does she burn them?" he asked her, picking up the panda bear to examine it closer. Wednesday snorted. The thought of Enid ever burning her teddy bears was horribly horrific. It hurt Wednesday to think about. It's one of the things that Enid. She felt a blush rising on her cheeks. It was one of the things she loved about her. Well, one thing in about 1,000, but who's counting? "It's a teddy bear," Wednesday said. Lucifer gave her a look. "They were made for human children to comfort them if they were scared of the dark." Lucifer frowned again. "So, why does she have them?" Wednesday went to open her mouth and then shut it again. Why did Enid have so many damn bears? Both angels stared at the teddy pile in a conundrum, unable to grasp the simplicity of owning so many fur-filled bears. The door to their dorm suddenly burst open. Wednesday felt her heart still. Her blood ran cold. No, 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 no! Lucifer turned his eyes to look at the newcomer. Enid stood in the doorway to their room, claws slightly extended. Wednesday noted her chest was heaving slightly, suggesting she had sprinted here. Howdy? Enid said, unsure how to approach the situation. She had sensed Wednesday's emotional state that read as fear. And she had bounded from the cafeteria and up the stone steps 2 at a time, desperate to get to her mate in time, despite being told stay where she was. Enid noticed as Wednesday simply gazed at her, and shook her head very, very cautiously. A warning. Whoever this was even had Wednesday on edge. Lucifer smiled. And who might you be? He asked. I'm Enid? She offered, still unsure. So you're the girl who captured my little sister's heart, Lucifer said, moving forwards. I don't think dash, Wednesday began. Lucifer held up his hand and both girls were frozen in place, hands by their sides. He moved over to Enid. Wednesday, desperate to move and keep her beloved away from Lucifer, found she simply couldn't, his power far greater than hers. Lucifer beckoned with a finger, and Enid was dragged closer to them, her shoes sliding across the floor, stopping a meter in front of him. He knelt down, so he was eye level with her hands. He lifted a hand, and her arm rose up of its own accord. He snapped his fingers and the claws on her hand extended. Enid let out a slight gasp. Lucifer peered down at the claws, turning her hand, this way and that. He hummed in approval. Very good. Sharp, deadly. I presume you keep them well groomed? He asked, looking up at Enid. She merely nodded, too stunned to say anything in kind. You should be proud, my lovely wolf, Lucifer said. You are strong, so very strong, he emphasized. Am I to understand you fought one of my little brothers upon your first ever shift? Yes, if you mean that douchebag of an angel, Enid snarked, her eyes sharpening with a flash of yellow. Wednesday's eyes widened. Oh boy. Lucifer did nothing but laugh. Oh, I like this one, Wednesday, he said, beaming. She's feisty, sharp and deadly. You chose well, baby sister. He waved his hand and both girls were suddenly unrestrained, and Wednesday immediately vaulted forwards to put herself between Lucifer and Enid. Lucifer rose an eyebrow. Really, Wednesday? Do you think if I wanted to harm her, you would stop me? He asked, amused. No, but I would die trying, she declared. Enid behind her felt her heart beat faster for the raven-haired demon. Wednesday, who is this? Enid asked, moving up to claim the space behind Wednesday's back. Ah, he barked. Where are my manners? My name is Lucifer, he said. Enid's eyes widened. Her claws sprang forth defensively. Stood in front of her was the actual devil, in the flesh. Wednesday merely rolled her eyes at Lucifer's dramatic way of dealing with things. Why are you here, Lucifer? She asked. Well, first I wanted to see if the rumors were true, that you fell in love with a human, Lucifer said, listing them off with his fingers. 2. I want to know how you escaped hell, both times, and 3. I wanted to see the young Leakin for myself, to make sure she was worth being with my baby sister, he said, winking at Enid, who blushed. Jesus Christ, smite me now, Wednesday thought. Anyway, Wednesday began, eager to draw Lucifer's attention away from what was hers. The first time I fought my way through the plains of holy fire, the circle of atrocities, many Leviathan were felled by my blade. I had to deal with my worst fears in the nameless atrocities. Lucifer chanced a glance at Enid and then back at Wednesday, pitying marking his features. You had to kill her, didn't you? Lucifer asked sympathetically. Yes, Wednesday said, casting her eyes downwards. So many of her, so many fucking times. Wednesday whispered. The sight of the girl's blood coating her hands still haunted her. Enid pressed forwards. Who Willa? Who did you have to kill? Wednesday lifted her head to gaze into golden pools of blue that had no business being so empathetic, so forgiving. I told you my suffering had become so great and so cosmic, Wednesday uttered. Because I had to kill you, so many times. Wednesday, Enid took a step back, out of shock, but the damage was done, and the hurt that spread across Wednesday's face will haunt her until the day she died. Lucifer sighed. The nameless atrocities is one of the abominable creatures that roam the outer boundaries of hell. They are creature of mimicry, perfect mimicry, Lucifer said, eyes gazing at Wednesday, who was starting to crumble. From looks right down to the personality, perfection. Wednesday supplied. Lucifer nodded. They're abysmal monsters, and you have to kill them in order to move forward. They trap you in a mirror world, and you go round in circles until you kill the source of their power, themselves. Enid's horrified look said it all. She looked at Wednesday, who shed tears silently. Enid rushed forwards and pulled Wednesday into her arms. Wednesday wept silently in Enid's embrace. Lucifer watched on sadly, her hands desperate on the blonde's back, clinging her to her. Lucifer walked up to them and placed a hand comfortingly on Wednesday's back. Only humans turning to demons are able to slip by them. They're weaker but more twisted than fallen angels like us, Lucifer said sadly. We can still love, it's the curse we carry, not. Curse. Wednesday mumbled into Enid's neck. What was that, Willa? Enid asked gently, her hands cradling the girl's neck. Wednesday leaned backwards to look Enid in her eyes. It's not a curse. Loving you is not a curse. Enid smiled sadly, brushing her fingers against the demon's cheek. I know, Wens, I know, Enid said gently, cupping the left side of her face with her right palm. There was a knock at the door. Enid, who was closest, untangled herself from Wednesday and strode over to the door and opened it, to see a small child with an armful of laundry. Laundry! He called out cheerfully. Enid smiled. Adon! How are you, you little scamp? She said happily, ruffling the boy's hair. Wednesday stiffened. Adon ducked away from Enid, grimacing, mumbling about over-affectionate werewolves. This couldn't be happening. Enid just ruffled the hair of. Wednesday was completely shocked. This wasn't happening. It was happening. Hi! Adon said cheerfully to Lucifer, who gave a polite, albeit bemused wave to the small child. If Lucifer figured out Adon was their father, or at least she suspected he was, given their last encounter, then things would go really bad, really quickly. Lucifer had been seeking answers from him as much as she did. Although his self-centered in nature, Wednesday only seemed to think of the wolf now. Wednesday almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Her father, her brother and her girlfriend, partner, paramour, all in a room together. Her father was more involved in the going-ons here than she first realized. Especially since it seemed like he was making house visits in her absence. Wednesday's eyes met Adon's, who gave her a cheeky smile. How she desired to wipe that smirk off his face. His eyes grew serious though, giving a look of pity. And she realized why. He wanted to apologize to her. Images flashed in her brain, her father using his omnipotent power to convey his meaning. An image of a nameless atrocity appearing in her head, one that had taken Enid's form. One of the million that already done so. Not only did they make you kill them in order to escape, they made you feel guilty for doing it too. She had to listen over 1,000,000 times as a perfect mimicry of Enid accused her of betraying her, not loving her, condemning her to death. It had taken its toll on her. Wednesday met her father's cosmic gaze and nodded her head. He smiled softly. Her hearing went mute as Adon turned to the others, his mouth moving before he gave a cheery wave and left the room, giving Wednesday one more smile before he turned the corner and was out of sight. She exhaled a deep breath she didn't realize she was holding. To my final bit of business, Ishmael will be back and I can't stay long, I'm afraid. Very well, Wednesday said with a curt nod. However, I do have this for you, Lucifer said with a smile. He held out a hand and smoke seemed to seep into existence, converging on his palm. Both wolf and demon watched as a shimmering silver blade appeared on his hand. Wednesday smiled, a real smile. OMG! Enid gushed excitedly. You have dimples? Her hands clasped together adorably. Lucifer just looked on in both semi-disgust and amusement. He leaned his forward conspiratorial. Is she always this? He paused to consider his words carefully. Vivid? Wednesday turned to look at Enid, whose eyes were practically hearts, filled with so much light and joy. It made Wednesday weak at the knees and light-headed simply knowing that this is the girl she had fallen for. Wednesday sighed. Yes, Lucifer smirked. Condolences. He muttered. Hey. I heard that. Enid huffed. Lucifer shook his head as he flipped the blade, catching it and presenting to Wednesday, hilt facing her. It was her angel sword, the one that Ishmael had stolen from her. Wednesday grasped onto the hilt and felt a surge of power surge through her, her body lighting up briefly. She nearly fell to her knees. Lucifer smiled. Some of your power has returned to you, I managed to find a small spell that is able to retrieve some of the residual grace on your weapon. Lucifer said she did indeed felt more powerful. Enough that she could confidently face down her brother if, and when she needed to, she flexed her fingers, that power coursing through her veins. Oh, how she missed it. It's the best I can do right now, Lucifer said. Thank you, brother, Wednesday said, resting the blade by the tip on the floor, with her hands now clasped over the handle. He nodded before turning his attention back to Enid. You're one of the good ones, Enid Sinclair, Lucifer said, almost grimacing. He hated humans, but the outcasts, the ones that were not fully human, he could tolerate. Enid preened proudly at his words, hands clasped behind her back, her smile infectious as it lit up the room around them. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Remember, your wolf is powerful. I can see it. Archangels can see the true nature of someone. No matter who they be, we can see them. He looked to Wednesday. For example, when I see Wednesday, her grace is surrounded in blackened smog. It used to be pure black smoke, but now it's just hazy smog. Her grace is bright and beautiful. He looked on, his face curiouser. Blips of light seemed to separate themselves from her grace. Like raindrops on a window, they all raced to the same spot. His gaze turned back to Enid. Her grace reaches out for you, only for you. Enid turned to look at Wednesday, eyes wide with soul-bearing devotion. And you, Enid, I see your soul. It's blinding, like the sun. You are without sin, without malice, without darkness. Your wolf stands tall and proud. Lucifer grinned like he knew a secret they didn't. Your wolf howls towards the moon that's enshrouded in smog. It whimpers and whines whenever you're separated from her. Enid dipped her head, face covered in a red blush. Your wolf only howls for her, Enid. His eyes darkened. Your wolf refused to turn for your family or those camps. Lucifer hissed, his eyes turning crimson red in fury, the conversion camps no doubt enraging him. But the moment Wednesday was in danger, your wolf spared no time in turning for her, as you well know. Lucifer finished, his eyes returning to its normal shade. Lucifer cleared his throat and turned to go to the window to their stone balcony. He pushed through as Enid and Wednesday made to follow. He stepped up on the railing and he took a breath, letting his wings of molten fire springing into existence. He turned to look at them a final time. You two will be okay, he said before letting his body fall before his wings started beating as he flew at an impeccable speed away from Nevermore. Enid slowly reached to take Wednesday's hand in her own as they watched the morning star fly. Your family is fucking nuts, Wyla, Enid said with a soft laugh. Wednesday couldn't help but agree. Neither of them would say anything when the morning papers arrived at breakfast, and the front page headline read as follows. 27 werewolf conversion camps set aballs and burned to the ground in countrywide arson agenda. Wednesday simply sipped on her coffee. Nope, they knew nothing. Nothing at all.